Welcome to the Armada podcast with your host, Kalorn.
This fleet feels very much like it just walked out of 2019 to me, truthfully.
Fox Omega.
I don't think we drop any points on any Separatist commander. I don't understand where this even came from.
And Juliet Whiskey.
And our special guest, Captain Tight Pants Truthy. Shout out to Mrs. Truthy.
That's what I get for telling you stories.
And now, the Armada podcast.
What is up, all you admirals out there? It is I, Juliet Whiskey, and welcome back to the Armada podcast. Tonight, we will be talking about the Hannover World Qualifiers, the strength of the MSU, and my favorite section, Hot Take 30. Like always, we have our host, the three-time world champion, Kalorn.
You can't call me that. Like, Truth's gonna get mad.
Omega.
Truthy's gonna lose his shit here, like about 2 seconds. But if you keep calling me that, man, you can't do it.
And our special guest, Captain Tight Pants Truthy. Shout out to Mrs. Truthy.
This is what I get for telling you stories.
This is what you
This
get
is
for
what
telling
you get.
stories. Gentlemen, how is everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. Been a week, coming hot off the lovely heels of the Hannover World Qualifier. What's up? Talk to me, baby. What y'all been doing this past week? You don't.
Yeah. Well, this last week I've been busy. I've just been looking at this, but I'm excited to be back talking with my battle boo. How's that DD214 blanket?
Oh boy, that DD214 blanket gets warmer and warmer every time. Every time I look at the news, I go, I'm not going there.
I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous. I need to snuggle up with you sometime. Just give me a little bit of that warmth.
Oh, definitely. We'll snuggle.
Fox, I'm feeling very left out right now.
I have no idea what's happening right now.
It's okay. The soldiers out there understand. They get it. The vets get it. It's all right.
Look, it wouldn't be two army people getting together if it wasn't a little homoerotic.
It's got to be a pinch of homoeroticism.
See, what I don't know is whether or not our like official intro is more pretentious or Jovan actually talking is more pretentious.
Option B. Always option B. But anyways, well, that does it for our lovely how everybody is doing. I didn't know. Actually, who am I handing it over to? Kalorn? Fox? Truth? God?
God is a good option in his right-hand man, Fox Omega, right?
Am I God's right-hand man? Is that what I am? Oh,
I think that's happening now.
I guess that is.
That's totally happening now.
That's my new intro.
Fox, that's God's right-hand man, Omega.
I'm going to get smited at some point halfway through a podcast, so this is fun. All right, I guess I'm going to start. We are talking about the Hannover World Qualifier that occurred 2 weeks ago now, I believe. There's been a lot of stuff happening lately. This might be the first time we've been this far behind, I feel like, but we've got a lot to talk about.
And those of you waiting for us to talk about Gen Con, we will talk about Gen Con next week. Don't you worry.
I don't wanna, but yeah, I guess we have to since things happened. But yeah.
Wait. Why don't you want to?
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it next week.
Leave that for next week. Let that one simmer.
Okay, we're gonna let it simmer.
But Hannover in Germany,
Before you get started, Truthy, what the hell is going on with the meta in Europe? For crying out loud, it is so weird.
I mean, it's always been like that. This looks very normal to me from what I'm used to seeing across the pond. They play very conservative, is how I would characterize it. That most of what I see, and I think Dennis is probably the exemplar of that. If you've ever had a chance to see Dennis play, he is very exact. And I don't think in a lot of fleets he comes up with, often he's the only one that really can pull it off because you have to be perfect. absolutely perfect for it to work. And I've seen other people try and use his fleets, like like that freaking Moralo fleet that everyone's so terrified that just bumps Moralo around 1,000 times. Nobody can run that except Dennis. Sorry, he goes by Toker online. So yeah, I mean, that kind of exemplifies what I'm used to seeing from the Europeans, is a more conservative approach to the game. You see very few 10-1s and 9-2s, and it's often a game of who can get the 8s consistently throughout the tournament. Like, you can see the top score here on day 2 was 21 points, average of 7 points for the top person. Usually you need 7 points to make the cut in a tournament you see on this side of the pond.
They play conservatively, and this is why we won the Revolutionary War. Sorry, continue.
We didn't fight the Germans.
Sure we did. Okay, 2-time World War champion. Let's go.
Oh, God.
I mean,
They're going to love us.
Wait. Weren't the Redcoats Hessians anyway?
Oh, yeah, fair point. And not the Redcoats, but they did hire Hessian mercenaries. You
Okay.
have a point there.
We're getting off topic. That's history. That's history. We're talking about space battles and plastic models and pew-pews. Yes, all
So
the pew-pews.
the best part about you bringing up Tok'ra is that, and his Morala fleet, is that he's the one guy that actually really does not like me very much.
Truth, he just unmuted for like half a second.
I have nothing to say to that. Dennis is a very nice person.
So much love and affection.
This is one of those things, Truthy, is why you really need to play in the ITC next year, because like there are rivalries that are born out of the ITC that live on, and it's fantastic.
Oh, God. I mean, okay. I love Worlds itself. I mean, online, I haven't been able to play consistently online. I think I play in the Vessel World Cup at this point out of habit, because I have almost no time to actually do that kind of crap. Whereas, an in-person tournament, I can get there, I get my 3 rounds in one day, good to go, have a lot of fun, then I can go back to being busy with everything else in my life.
No, I totally get that. It's just fun, because it's one of those things that a lot of times we don't get it, other than going to like Worlds. You don't get a lot of chances to play with people from other countries. And I realize I'm talking about our last week's topic, but it is one of those things where the ITC last year and the ITC this year introduced me to people that I never would have played a game with if we didn't play in the ITC.
Yeah, that sounds super fun. And maybe I'll try and find time next year. Maybe I'll be an honorary Texan. That sounds like fun.
I mean,
Ooh.
you're a major in the Army. You practically are a Texan, right?
I mean, like half our bases are in Texas, although I've done an excellent job of avoiding it.
Look. Come to Hood. I'll go to San Antonio.
No! God, why? Oh, no!
Come to Hood. Listen.
I will keep saying no. I will never, ever go to Hood. Why would you ever want to go to Hood? They murder people at Hood.
It's the great place. But listen, in all seriousness, the reason why I say Hood, I know Hood is ghetto. Hood is beyond ghetto. But you are literally smack dab in the middle of you are literally smack dab in the middle of 3 major cities. So that's why I say go to Hood or go to San Antonio. Avoid Bliss like it's the plague. No offense.
I mean, I've basically been to Bliss. I have been to Bliss actually for a training exercise, but Bliss and Fort Huachuca, Arizona, basically the same place. And I also see Fox is now telling us to shut the heck up and actually talk about Armada.
Fox is just confused. That's okay. Sorry, we'll get back on topic. This is why we can't have battle buddies in the same room.
You can't have it anyway. So I think the one thing, if we're just gonna jump right into Hanover, I think what really shocks me is if you look at the day 2. Speaking of Dennis, he's the only one that lost all 3 of his games. Like, Dennis is a superb player, and I am just shocked to see 0-3 on day 2 from him.
That was one of the things that stood out to me too, and we talked about that, didn't we, Fox?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the pedigree of players we have here, because it's a regular who's who of Central Europe.
Yeah, I think I recognize every single one of these names.
Yeah, it's pretty. The talent here is pretty wild. But before we get into that, let's talk about the general statistics of the tournament. So the way this one was structured is it was 3 days. There were 2 heats basically, and then a day 3 top 12, which I found interesting. Usually it's not like a top 12 cut. Usually it's an 8 or a 16. But in the first 2 days, so on Friday they had 16 players, and on Saturday they had 39. Huge turnout. So that's, what is that, 55? 55 players cutting to a top 12. And I mean, the players who ended up making, and another fact
Did they take
is,
6 from each, or how did they do that, Fox?
they did not take 6 from each. They took you're making me do math really, really fast. This is a stat I really should have pulled before.
Never do math in public.
It was
math in public.
It looks like it was
two.
the flat tournament points. So Tokra barely made it in on Friday. So with 26 tournament points. So kind of crazy. I mean, usually I think the way they usually do it is like the top 2 or 3 or 4 get in guaranteed, and then after that it's tournament points. But maybe it was that way. I don't know. I should have asked. This is embarrassing. Wow. Juliet, what you got?
Oh, I was just gonna say my eyes kind of crossed when you started doing the breakdown there. Can you break it down Barney style? Can you make it simple enough for the crown eaters to understand?
What part?
Whoa! Wait, when did you join the Marine Corps?
I didn't, but there's Marines who probably play this because
okay,
like
fair enough.
Little plastic ships. I don't.
Wait, what part was confusing? What? What happened?
Just keep going. It's okay. Never mind. Don't worry
from the top.
39 players there were 16 players on day 1, 39 players on day 2. That ended
pause
up
right there.
Well, go ahead.
Why were there more players on day 2? That's not how. What? Huh?
I think he's talking about heats. So a lot of times for these bigger tournaments, you'll have heat 1 and heat 2 that are both considered day 1, quote unquote. Nova Open's just like it the same way. So you'll interested to know why there's such a discrepancy between the 2 heats that made up that day 1, quote unquote. Because
Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, it was a Friday and Saturday. That kind of Yeah, I get why some people could take off, and Saturday's really easy to make. So that makes sense.
Interestingly, there were a couple of X-Wing tournaments that I went to that were set up this way, Truthy, and actually LSO in 2021 was set up that way, where they had a Friday and a Saturday day 1, and then the day 2 stuff was on Sunday. There was often a lot of talk about when I was playing X-Wing about whether or not you wanted to play in the day 1 heat and then have a day off before you would go to a cut. Is that something? Would you have any thoughts on whether or not that's a good idea?
I've it's a decent idea. I know that I remember hearing that after 2017's Worlds, where JJ played on day 1 or the heat 1 day, and then I'm forgetting Brick's real name, but Brickhouse, he was the other one in the final. And I remember the interview afterwards, like he had been in the day 2 heat, and he just said by the end of it he was fried. Just back-to-back days, he just couldn't do it anymore. So there's advantages. I know some people like to look at what happens on day 1, look at the meta, and maybe make some adjustments. Perfectly legal technically. And I think that's why you see some people kind of keep the lists closed. Word leaks out sometimes. But that break is nice to have, I think.
I mean, I agree the break would be nice to have, but if you're playing day 1, especially this Friday, Saturday situation, and of course this is more of a question-ish, I don't know. Anyways, I would personally pick Saturday in that situation, because Friday, I know it's only going to be the most competitive of the competitive. Those are going to be the top dogs. Those are the guys who are like, yo, I'm taking this day off specifically, go stomp some mud hole in somebody.
That's not necessarily true. So what happens with Nova Open, the Heat 1 is Thursday, Heat 2 is Friday. What I generally see on Thursday is not necessarily the creme de la crop. And that's not to say there are bad players on Thursday, but the really competitive out-of-towners come Friday because it's the easier day to get off, whereas Thursday is really just locals day, and you can take the day off from work and drive, as opposed to needing to make those plans for long distance trip or for.
Who knew we were going to talk about tournament strategy? It's actually one of the things that I'm worried about with Worlds and the idea of a last chance qualifier, Truthy. If that's
Oh, I
the
love it.
route that I have to do to get a Worlds invite, the idea of having to play in a last chance qualifier and then in the day one heat and then in a potential day two, that's terrifying.
So I think that doesn't sound pleasant. The last chance qualifiers are probably going to have a rough go of it, because you're going to have that back to back to back in theory. Because I think last Worlds, no one really had an advantage because you just had the big open field day one, and then they cut the field in, I want to say, half, and then they didn't actually reset scores. They just had you just go from there. So yeah, it's going to be rough. But I've never really felt that fatigue in a tournament, and that's not to say it isn't taxing, but I think my secret is that I'm like the Hulk in that I'm always tired.
Or in the Sesame Street spoof with Cookie Monster where he says, "Me always hungry."
Yes.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, I'm always tired. I'm always making terrible decisions. I just kind of fly at it half asleep, and we're good to go.
All right, well, let's jump in. Let's talk about these lists. I want to get, even though they did a top 12 cut, we're going to talk about the top 8 because that's kind of what we've been consistently talking about. It's going to make the most sense in a comparative way to other tournaments. So, first thing I'm going to talk about is the faction spread.
Can I take one alibi for number 10? Because I want to talk about number 10.
Yes, we can talk about number 10. We'll talk about that before we jump into the deeper things. How about that? I do have the faction spread for the top 12, though, which is interesting. So, top 12 faction spread, there were 4 Imps, 4 Empire, 5 Rebel, 2 Galactic Republic, and 1 Separatist fleet. This is pretty much in line with what we've been seeing. I don't think I have any additional comments about it. What do you guys think about that?
I guess the only thing that stood out to me was that there was only one CIS player, and I don't know if there is. With looking through the day one, day two stuff, I didn't see a lot of CIS just in general, and I feel like that. And I guess the other thing is, like, when you looked at the people who were playing CIS in the ITC from the kind of European countries, it wasn't a terribly popular faction there. And I didn't know if Truthy or Fox, you guys have any thoughts on why that is?
I think Armada players are slow to change, and I don't think that's unique to Europe or unique to North America or any other spot. Because everybody has the stuff they're comfortable with, and people creating new fleets is pretty uncommon. I mean, Toker's been flying pretty much the same thing forever. So,
actually, with the conversation earlier with the European theater being more conservative and more perfectionist with their fly styles, I'm kind of shocked low GAR numbers. Like I already know that it's because GAR is a pain to fly and it's got too many tokens and too many of the things with the other stuff, and you got to activate this over there on Tuesday at 3 a.m. or else it won't work right. But putting in that context of the previous conversation, I wonder why less GAR if they are really more tactically sound.
I think it just comes down to they also tend to be pretty squad heavy over there. I mean, that's kind of normal for most Armada, but I think it just comes down to GAR is just, it is definitely harder to use. I don't think there's any question about it. It took me a long time to really be able to even feel moderately comfortable with the faction. So it's hard not to say GAR is hard mode. It's not to say that a really good player can get it right. It just seems to take a lot more time investment to get it there. And I think that's kind of why I'm excited about that number 10 list, is because it's just so funky. And I know that the Germans are kind of excited about it. I've been talking to Veers a little bit about it, and it's just this interesting tank build that I'm really kind of interested in.
So, Truthy, one of the things that when I looked at that list, it kind of solves one of the issues that I've had with Gar, being that Gar tends to be very difficult to play in terms of like lots of actions going on at once. It solves some of that issues, but there's still a lot of tokens moving around and SFAT tokens and things you have to remember.
I think what he's done here and why he went with Tarkin is to kind of simplify some of that. So he does have a lot of the token management, and let's just talk about it real quick. So the one we're talking about here is
Truthy, let Fox read through it here real quick.
Yeah, there you
go. He wanted to do that.
I'm the professional reader of the group and interviewer. So, okay, we have it's called Tarkin 2 Peltas, which is fun. We have a Venator 2 with Tarkin on it, and then mirror image Venators, Intel Officer, Ordnance Experts, SFATs, thermal shields, and assault proton torpedoes on both of them. The flagship, though, has DBY and Tranquility. And then we have 2 Peltas, 2 transport frigates, both with projection experts, one with parts resupply and one with munitions resupply. So lots of tokens all over the place, both from Tarkin and from these resupplies. That is a pretty awesome setup.
Yeah, so I talked to Veers about this because I think he's friends with this guy. They talked about it a bit on their own German podcast, which was thankfully in English for that episode. And I was listening to how this all works. And like the 2 projection expert peltas are kind of the key to it, which is kind of something I've been saying for a while, is you just tank it up with the peltas. They're so cheap, and you're throwing 4 shields onto whatever target. And the reason he uses Tarkin is to be able to flip to that extra repair dial on the flagship, so that if you need to navigate, it sounds like he's con-firing a lot, which kind of makes sense with those assault proton torpedoes. Just get more blacks into the pool to try and trigger that special crit. And it's so many shields coming back up on the Venators. You can get 7 shields back up on a Venator and without really much of a problem again and again and again. I think it's interesting to see, when it's such a squad heavy meta, you have absolutely no squadrons in this fleet. And I think it comes down to he's trying to preserve points, like playing kind of that castle game where he doesn't give anything up in the squad game at all. You have to kill a ship in order to get any points out of this thing. And the soft targets of the peltas, and you get 54 points for a ton of work to get through that. So I think it's very interesting to see. He didn't look like he did too terribly well on day 2, but this is also the same guy, and I think just a slightly modified version of the same fleet that won Polish Masters.
So yeah, now I really have to go look at this fleet list, because that's one of the instincts that I got when I initially picked up Gar, was just, yo, these are tanks. Like, there's a way to make these things like just completely obnoxious to try to destroy. So hearing it, it's confirmation bias.
What's interesting is that I tried a kind of similar list to this in the CIS faction, using Admiral Trench to like supercharge repairs, and had 2 munis and a hard cell that had projection experts, along with a really hard hitting Patriot Fist that had Watt on it. So you just like shove shields at you throw the Patriot Fist in front of stuff and then shove shields at it with everything else. And where I found that it broke down was against double dice bombers. And I don't know that this one has the same weakness as the trench version that I was trying.
Yeah, Tranquility in particular is a really tough nut to crack, because you can probably punch through that other Venator too. I'd be really concerned with Plo Koon here, and like I've said before, being squadless is rough these days, and Plo Koon is one of the things that's always tickling the back of my head. Like, I don't love him as a commander, but he exists to kind of prey on fleets like this, where you can just lock down the redirects for infinity and just drill straight into the hull.
So before we get too gaga over this, let's get back on topic. And Fox, do you want to go through the top 8 stats with us?
Yep, I love numbers. So here we go. First, let's talk about bids. Bids for the top 8, starting at number 1 and going down to 8. We have 400, 398, 400, 396, 400, 383, 398, 396. This is a significant departure from the patterns we've been seeing, where about half the fleets are bidding below 393, seems to be like the number for heavy bidding, and half of them are close to 400. So I guess we need to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So the thing that stood out to me here, and I'll get before I get to Juliet real quick, is that one big bid was a Starhawk list, and that which I find interesting to talk about for next week. And then Jovan or Juliet Whiskey, what you got?
383. What the heck is that? What? Explain somebody now.
So that's what I was talking about. That's the Starhawk list, and I what I don't know is if I'm fairly certain he was bidding for second. I don't know that. So the reason why I think that it's kind of weird is because I usually only see people like Radis going for a bid that big to go for first. So Truthy, do you have any insight on that particular list?
No, I have no clue, man. I'm looking at it now, and it's it's definitely very different than yours. I feel like I'm not looking at a complete fleet because it's not very heavy on squads. It leans hard into the tank hawk though, with a Pelta with projection experts, and it's got boarding troopers on the Starhawk. This is a funky fleet.
Yeah, I don't like I said. This is the one that I was like, I don't know if this is an actual real fleet or not. Fox, do you want to read through it, and then if you had any, because just so for you guys are aware for background, Fox did spend some time talking with Real Veers, who wasn't at this tournament but knew a lot of the people that were, so we got some background information from him for this episode.
I don't have any digs on this player in particular, but you want me to read through the fleet? It's Starhawk 1 with Kirsta, Walix, Link Turbo Laser Towers, Expert Shield Techs, Boarding Troopers, PDICs, and Amity. A Pelta Command Frigate with Leia, Projection Experts, and Boosted Comms. A GR-75 with Torn Far and CommsNet. And then 4 Aces, Lando, Ketsu, Shara, Tycho, and a VCX. Which, if it were incomplete, I feel like that's where it would be a second VCX or something like that. But it's definitely interesting. I agree with Truthy. Yeah, I don't know how well it did. Well, I do know how well it did.
It came in 6 and then went 1 and 2 on day 2. Looks like it had a couple really tight games and then a solid win over the Venator fleet actually in round 3. Which
I'm insulted.
That game must have been just like projection experts everywhere.
Yeah, I'm guessing that was just him like sticking his Starhawk in front of something and farming an objective or something like that. It did show like some of these have all their objectives. The only objective shown that we have with this one is superior positions. So I'm wondering if he just farmed superior positions on the Venators all day long.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know.
But yeah, I guess from a just more of a macro perspective, it in a way, these bids were not surprising to me, Fox, because you've got people who are either at 400, so they don't care, or you have the people that are trying to just barely outbid the people who are at 400, and then you have one guy that's trying desperately to get a thing, so to get either first or second, whatever you might be. So that actually kind of fits what we have been seeing, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
Fox, did you have any thoughts, further thoughts there? Or
All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next portion while Fox continues to try to figure out what's going on with his Fisher-Price internet. So does anybody have any additional input on bids? Going once, going twice. Sold to John over in the corner. All right, so we're going to move on to squad points. So we're looking at 126, 111, 133, 134, 17, 93, 130, and 0. Somebody talk to me about these numbers because they're a little bit high, and then we just fall off the face of the earth.
Yeah, Europe is usually squad heavy. It's nice to see the flex there. I like the 93. The 17 surprises me. The 0 surprises me. It's it's. I think what it goes to show you, and I'd have to actually see what the top actually and it looks like. But it's good to see lighter squads doing just fine, getting into that top 12. And it looks like number 2 didn't even hit that like top bracket of squad points. Number 2 was the one with 111 points, which is relatively small. Like usually if you're 20 points removed from the maximum, you're considered to be a little bit of a disadvantage. I've lived there before. I find it to be very good and able to trade up in points value against other squad fleets. But it's good to see confirmed, in my opinion.
Truthy, it was interesting that you were talking about the being in that kind of 100 to 120 point range of squads. What I find interesting is that particular fleet you're talking about, and I am going to not butcher the gentleman's name. He was number 2 at Hanover, and is very obviously Polish. He was playing Riken, so even though he had less squad points, he can like zombie one of them if it and prevent it from dying.
Oh yeah, and you better believe it was just like Shara was probably the first one. I've seen the Shara Riken yeet into tying everything down, and it's obnoxious as all get out. Better bring some grit.
What the hold on, wait, new terminology. Let me get my pen and paper for the vocab lesson. Zombieing a fleet. What?
Well, Riken is often referred to as the zombie lord. So what Riken does is keeps a dead thing on the board until the end of the round. So say Shara, for example, is kind of like the best squadron to do this with, because you just put Shara, throw her out in the middle of every squad you can possibly engage, and then she dies. Oh well, you're still tied down with a squadron that has counter 3. Sucks to be you.
Counter 3, Jesus Christ.
Have you not encountered Shara yet?
I have not encountered Shara yet.
I need you to introduce Juliet Whiskey to Shara next time you play him.
I will make that happen. The worst part about Shara, the worst part about Shara, Juliet, is that when you roll her counter dice, crits count as hits. So counter 3 with crits counting as hits, it's 2 or 3 damage back basically every single time.
And I'm gonna make a slight.
I appreciate you.
I'm gonna make a slight detour. When I'm playing Grievous, Shara actually makes me excited from the other side of the table because I can one-shot my own squads with counter half the time.
I can choose not to counter, correct, Struthy?
You absolutely can. If you don't want to counter with Shara and I just keep getting a shooter, that's fine.
Just checking for our match this weekend. For those of you who don't know, Truthy has very kindly asked to have a match this weekend, so we'll report back on that.
Against that damn Starhawk.
It's not going to die, so I mean, I'm okay.
Sounds like free content. Let's do this.
So, Fox, do you want to take us on to talking about deployments and activations?
Yeah, I'm going to lump them both together real quick, and we can talk about them in unison. So deployments, we had 788, 75585. And then for activations, we had 3554, 5345. A lot of numbers. But basically, if you had 7 deployments, you were out deploying or equaling a majority of the competition. And if you had 5 activations, you were top of class. So I guess let's talk about that.
The right hand of God has spoken for his golden rule of 575. Pay attention, class. Pay attention.
I guess one of the things that I was curious about here is that this actually is kind of mirroring what we're starting to see, especially on the deployment side. Man, getting to that 8 deployment mark right now, it really feels like that's where you want to be if you were very serious about winning. Truthy, is that something that you guys are anticipating seeing at Nova, is kind of these 7-8 deployment fleets being prevalent?
It's Nova, man. I expect to be more Star Destroyers than there are people. Nova's weird, man. Very weird.
Oh, wait. Elaborate. What do you mean very weird? Like, you can't just throw that
So
out there with the new guy here.
the Nova Open community, I find, is generally fairly insular. You know, Northern Virginia, Maryland, and DC, they just kind of play their own version of, they play their own game, and most of the locals just don't pay attention to the larger game meta. I think it's probably mostly symptomatic of, a lot of very busy people are playing the game. They don't really just kind of play it casually, and then they go to the Nova Open and they want to play with Star Destroyers because, like, my meta is like 75% Imperials. So what has happened the last 3 Nova Opens running, there were more Imperial Star Destroyers on tables than there were players on each of the on the Thursday heats. 3 years running, more ISDs than people.
It's what's funny is like that could describe Texas like in 2019, right, Fox?
It's pretty close to accurate. I was guilty of it, and we had several people in our meta who were guilty of it. So
yeah, the difference is we just never learned any lessons, and people just keep bringing that. And then, the folks that come from out of town, they tend to bring the more competitive stuff, but it warps the meta so strangely. I never know what to expect, really. I know what to expect from the really good players that are coming, but also at the same time, the really good players that are coming tend to be people who like to fly weird crap, like Duckbird. She hasn't really been playing much lately. She's probably the best player locally, in my opinion. And I will absolutely say she's better than me. And if she ever flew anything that was remotely in meta, we'd all be doomed. But she always wants to fly jank, complete and total jank. Like, you're talking Palpatine MSU with decimators. She still was one spot from the cut. Like, that's how good this girl is. So that's also a lot of the locals are like. If they're actually competitive, they're very counter meta.
From that information, I need the matchup between Fox, the right hand of God Omega, and Duckbird. I need it. Because all Fox loves doing is flying some out of left field kind of shenanigans. So yeah, we need to make this happen. Fox, make it happen.
okay. Anyways, let's carry on with our analysis. So we want to talk about the top 4 fleets that were here at Hanover. I'm going to go ahead and start with list number 4. This is Daniel Unzeitig. We'll go with that. He's actually been featured on the podcast a couple times now, and he brought something that we're already familiar with, him flying at the UKGE World Qualifier. So I'm going to roll through this real quick. He had 4 CR90As, all with turbo laser reroute circuits. His commander was General Riken, and on his flagship, he had Sabine Wren. On another, he had Adar. On another, he had Torin. On another, he had Ezra. So he had a unique officer in every single one of these ships. And then he flew, let's see, what is this? This is 7 squads. So Hera and the Ghost, Lando, Martin, Wedge, Gold Squadron, Rogue Squadron, and a YT 2400. Really, really tight, really, really good fleet. He's been doing excellent with this. What are our thoughts on this fleet?
I think that this is one of the new strengths of the meta. And it is one of those things that's going to deal you 1,000 paper cuts. And if you kill something, it's not going to come off the board until the end of the round with Riken. So killing you something at the top of a turn doesn't really do you any good. And so it's just one of those like very annoying fleets that changes the calculus of Armada in general, so that the things that you think are going to happen because your experience of like, oh, I can kill that, and so it won't shoot me back, and then I can be safe. It kind of goes out the window.
A version of this fleet, either with Riken or Kraken, has been showing up at the top tables pretty consistently throughout the year. So I think it's obviously quite good.
Well, and Daniel's been the one doing it, so that's also important. He's the one that
Well,
won.
it's also pretty similar to what Justin did with Adepticon, because I think he had 3 90As and a 90B with heavy ion placements, and then max squads, and he was at the top table in the last round at Adepticon.
Yeah, it's a really strong archetype right now. Let's move into the next fleet, which is not eerily similar. Actually, this switches the commander. It's awesome. This is Daniel Wolf, aka 187 Leon on Discord. He's all these guys have absolutely stellar track records. Daniel is a regional champ. He's usually a contender at the top of a lot of these events in Germany. Real Veers told me that he has a tendency to kick, that Daniel has a tendency to kick Veers out of the cut in a lot of these competitions, which I found to be really funny. His fleet is a Dodonna fleet. It starts with an MC-30 torpedo frigate with Lando Ordnance Experts, APTs, H9 turbo lasers, and foresight. The flagship is a CR-90A with Dodonna turbo laser readout circuits and Jaina's Light. A CR-90B with Dodonna's Pride. 2 GR-75s, one with Adar and boosted comms, one with Tauren and Quantum Storm. And then his squadron ball of 133 points is Hera and a Ghost, Dash, Corrin, Nora, a YT-2400, Rogue Squadron, and Gold Squadron. Absolutely no bid with this one. This is a fantastic fleet. I love to see Dodonna. How do we feel about this?
I have no earthly idea how to even talk about this fleet. Like, I cannot. I think it's a credit to just how good of a player Daniel is. I could not see taking Dodonna this day and age. And he not only took Dodonna, he took Dodonna's Pride. I feel like he went hard mode and did really well. This is, I have no earthly clue how this fleet flies. I'm just gonna be honest.
So one thing to note here is I've played 187 Leon several times on TTS over the years. He was actually the one that introduced the Moralo fleet to me, and I got super tilted and told him that I didn't want to play, so I didn't play him that day. That's the story for another day. But the thing that I find about Leon is just that he is one of the best squad players that I've really ever seen. And you look at this squad ball and you're like, well, how do you win with this squad ball? How do you win against another squad ball with this? And Leon's one of those guys that he'll make it happen. And that's really important, because if this squad ball dies, you lose out on how you're going to apply the damage and how Dodonna is going to make it hurt.
I think that's actually a really important aspect to what Daniel did here, because if you look at the fleet right above him in second place, it's basically the same archetype, an MC-30, 2 CR-90s, and 2 transports. But by switching over to a commander that's 14 points cheaper, he can squeeze in all the squads that he wants to play with, a full 133. And that's what you just said is pretty telling. Like, it's clear that part of the strategy of using Dodonna was being able to get as much out of this squad ball as possible. So I bet he used that to his advantage.
But I mean, look, the other thing is you look at it, you're like, okay, do you want to give this fleet first? Do you want to give it second? What do you want to do here? So if you give it second, he's got infested fields and he's going to throw rocks in front of you, and then he's going to use Dodonna to draw when you land on a rock. He's got planetary ion cannon, and he's going to use that to, again, draw Dodonna if he gets crits from the planetary ion cannon shots. Or he's got most wanted, and which just gives him more damage off of the his semi MSU that he's got going on here. So it's like, okay, what do you want to do here? And that you've got a whole host of bad decisions that you have to make. Even though he's got no bid, he still has this way of screwing with your plan in your fleet?
It's an interesting conundrum. It'd be hard to choose to go first because giving him second with more activations could be really, really detrimental. And he gets his objectives. Yeah, it's a really well designed fleet. I like it a lot. So if you're a Rebel MSU player, we're giving you a lot of really good ideas. Let's move on to second place, and this is Primislaw. Hopefully I said that right. I'm sorry if I didn't. This is another MSU Riken fleet. It's a MC-30 scout frigate with Riken, expert shield techs, ordnance experts, X-Rax, TRCs, and Foresight. A CR-90A with Ezra, TRCs, and Jaina's Light. A CR-90A with TRCs. 2 GR-75s, one with Tauren, one with Bright Hope. Well, I'm sorry, one with Tauren and Bright Hope, one with Hondo and Comsnet. And then we have for squadrons Lando, Hera and the Ghost, Wedge, Shara, Green Squadron, and Gold Squadron. Total of 398. So how do we feel about this one, you guys? This is another Rebel MSU. That's crazy that we've got 3 in the top 4. How do y'all feel about this?
So, Truthy, you actually pointed this one out as being interesting to you because of the squads earlier and the fact that it didn't have a full squad complement. This is it's this fleet and Daniel Unzig's, and I'm sorry if I butchered that name, the 2 Riken MSU fleets that I think are really indicative of what you might expect to see and maybe some of the tournaments that we're going to start seeing here this fall with World Qualifiers here at the Nova and in the St. Laurent Open and stuff like that. How would you approach these fleets with the things that you're playing now?
So what you really got to do with Riken is force choices on who he's going to resurrect in a given turn. Like, last thing you want to have happen is Shara dying one turn and like Green Squadron dying the next turn. One of the things you can do really well with Riken is tie down large chunks without really fear. You can get, I'm pretty sure that's why Green Squadron's there, is to die and be a zombie for a turn and tie everything down so they can't move. That way Lando and Gold Squadron can go free reign on bombing runs. And I've flown a Kraken style version of a fleet like this. Like, I've done the MC-30, and mine was 3 CR-90s and about 110-ish to somewhere in there points for squadrons. It's a really fun fleet. It's really good fleet, and it's not a coincidence. He's got 6 unique squadrons to include green and gold. Every single one of those squadrons can die and tie you down after their death, which gives the CR-90s and the Scout Frigate a chance to just keep on keeping on with those paper cuts.
So I guess the question for me again is just like you said, force them to make choices. So can you give us an example of, with maybe one of the fleets that you're flying right now, of what you might do to force him to make that choice?
It's one of those, it's going to be, it depends on the situation kind of things, unfortunately. The last thing you want to do, for example, is try and knock out Shara and Green Squadron on the same turn. Don't let him draw you out. To keep some key squadrons on obstacles. Keep your squadrons from all getting tied down, or that critical squadron where you need to go to a certain spot. Use obstacles. Grit is not going to go unrewarded here. Grit squadrons are highly underrated, and I think they're really great against Riken fleets that want to tie you down with zombie squadrons. And then, don't forget to pressure ships. For some reason, everyone seems to forget Riken works on ships too, and a ship is a lot more important to this fleet than one of these squadrons. So if you've got pressure on a ship, you might want to hold on to Riken until, for the ship itself to make sure it shoots. So it's just all about trying to, it's really hard to do. It's a really good fleet, and there's no magic thing that you're going to be able to do to this fleet. It's just going to be in the moment and trying to keep pressure on how many Riken choices he has to make in a turn.
Wait. I have a plan. I have a plan within a plan. All we have to do is use the forbidden phrase, and it'll cause something to go wrong. It's worked with Fox, so it may work here also.
Don't do it. Don't do it. So the last fleet is Peter's fleet, and Peter is fairly famous in terms of a top player. Veers told us that he's kind of he was top 20 in Worlds in 2019. He's the former European champion. He's a current runner-up to the Continentals for Europe. He's the two-time Polish Nationals champion and one-time German title champion. He's known for flying Sloan, and Veers says he's arguably the best Polish player, which I think he's demonstrated once again here in Hanover, beating a whole bunch of Germans. So he was flying an Admiral Sloan fleet with an Imperial 2 that had Sloan, Nita, local fire control, reserve hangar deck, electronic countermeasures, leading shots, and Relentless as the title. A Quasar Fire 1 with Vanto, flight controllers, reserve hangar deck, boosted comms, and Squall. And then a Gazanti with CommsNet and reserve hangar deck. And then for squadrons, he had Jendon, Vader of Defender, Merrick, Mauler, Saber, and 3 TIE interceptors. This fleet feels very much like it just walked out of 2019 to me, Truthy.
Oh god, yeah, absolutely. This is freaking 2-ship. Like, it's 2-ship with a Gazanti added in. It is. I love saying it, to be honest. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I mean, this feels it's a throwback. It's a throwback fleet, and I love it. Like, leading shots, nobody takes that anymore. The key difference here, I think, is local fire control, and that I think I love that he kind of had confidence in his squad abilities to not worry about PDIC, because I bet you he uses that Imperial 2 like a bully with local fire control and just get in there and use his leading shots because it's got the Quasar and the Gazanti to take care of all the squadrons. And that is a nasty squad combo. Merrick, it's the new 3 best friends. Vader and the Defender, Merrick and Jendon, all just a horrific bombing combo. Saber because Saber, and then Mauler because it's always good to have splash damage. And then you have reserve Harridas with 3 interceptors. It's all great. It's all solid. And it's good to see the Imperial 2 at the top instead of an Onager. I mean, I guess we gotta retract our whole idea with the Imperial last time I was on here. Imperial 2's fine. Take it. It's good.
I think I was saying something about that, but that's okay. A couple things that stood out to me here, Truthy, is that one, he's got Nita and local fire control, so he's almost certainly going brace, redirect, evade, and salvo, which kind of turns this into a weird.
That's a good catch.
It kind of turns it into a weird recusant, but it's got electronic countermeasures. And then the other thing is that he's got Relentless, which is something we've often decried as something that like newer players will take. Why do you think he might have gone in this direction?
Well, one, because evade's good and salvo's good, and you're right. I didn't notice that. Dropping the redirect is an interesting call, but he's got ECM to fall back on, so I guess that actually kind of, if you're confident in that and feeding that, I can see why you go that direction, because there's some big advantages for both of those defense tokens. So if you're not too worried about the double redirect, then have at it. Relentless, I think, is probably just a flexibility thing. Yeah, it usually is a upgrade newer players take, but he maxed out his point here, right? Yeah, 400. That strikes me as like I have 3 points left, and this is kind of a nice quality of life upgrade, so why not grab it? I don't see any gaping holes to put anything in, so yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I would expect something like this to start showing up as well, and I actually do really like this fleet as well. I'm assuming that he's using Vanto here. to get himself a squad token most of the time, but also giving himself the flexibility to speed up or slow down if he needs to.
Yeah,
by
that'd be my
grabbing
assumption as well.
For that. But overall, I mean, like I said, I just to put a little bow on Hanover here, I thought that it was a very interesting tournament. I think it's a very interesting things that the things that they're doing. I really appreciate your kind of insight into the fact that they're being conservative here, because it really stands out. And we talked a little bit last week and the week before about LSO, about just what kind of tank fleets and preserving points and doing things like that. It really feels like they have taken this to an extreme to a degree.
Yeah, you look at the standings at the top here. It's so tight. Like the top person has 21 tournament points. Number 2 and 3 are both at 20. Number 4 and 5 are both 19. Like and the other undefeated fleet in there is at number 4 with only 19. It's so tight with these really good players. It's really cool to see how this shook out. Like we didn't even talk about the number 5 fleet, and he's within 2 tournament points of winning the tournament. So it just looks like it was a really good couple of days of Armada.
Yeah, that number 5 fleet had 1 squad, and it was Tel Trevura.
All right then.
Sorry, I just thought me to throw that out there because it was just wild to me. Yeah, so if you guys are interested, we'll post a link to the top 12 lists so you can peruse all of them to your leisure, and to kind of take some inspiration, maybe if you like to, from some of these guys. I don't know, Truthy, I might throw this Peter's fleet on the table at some point. I think it's one of those things that it's just really strong.
Good. It's really, really good. And the objectives on it are just solid as a rock too. So yeah, I guess the ISD is not as bad as we thought. I think just having Nita on it alone, I guess. I don't know how it took us all so long to get there, but just throw Nita on it and you've got some pretty good honor defense. Who knew?
Well, it's the way that the 1.5 changed the evade rule. I think that made a big difference, and we were all kind of slow on the uptake about Nita and Imperial 2s specifically. But his confidence to go down to 1 redirect really is what catches my eye here.
Absolutely agree.
So, Juliet Whiskey, can you take it away with us to do a little hot take 30 action before we close it up for the night?
Yes, sir. It is time for... actually, before we even go into it, I know we stated at the beginning of the episode that we would be doing an MSU breakdown, but we decided that we're going to go ahead and move past that because our episodes already last too goddamn long. Now it's time for Hot Take 30. And we're going to start off with the man, the myth, Fox will come back around to you in a moment. I just want to give your router a little bit of time to, bear the beast of burden, just we're going to go over to Captain Tight Pants Truthy. CIS commanders are fine after a 5-point decrease. Grievous would still be okay at 10 points. Do you think that's a hot take?
What the hell kind of take is that?
It's a take. It's hot, and it's a take.
If you did that with Kraken or Martuk or TF, you're crazy. Dooku and Trench, I'd be okay with a decrease. And y'all are sleeping on Grievous.
We taking naps on Grievous? We snuggled up with Grievy Greaves?
He's coming for you.
He's coming for you. Well, it does Killorn. You got anything to say on that?
Personally, I think the CIS commanders are all really cheap for what they do, with the exception of Trench, and we can shout about Trench until the cows come home if you want to, but there's not a whole lot of point to it.
The Rube Goldberg machine is there for people who like to make absurdly complicated fleets.
And like I was talking about before, Trench repair fleet, it worked. It was complicated, but it worked. It did something, sort of.
You could at least make the argument that it's flavorful.
It was flavorful. So, Fox, Juliet Whiskey, you want to hit Fox with his?
No, I was going to ask if Fox wanted to throw his 2 cents into the ring first before we move on to Fox's.
Yeah, I don't think we drop any points on any Separatist commander. I don't understand where this even came from. Like, they're all better than everyone says they are. So why? Also, like, dropping them 10 points is redonkulous. Like, dipping under 20. Um, it, yeah, no, it's hard to wrap my head around it. Oh boy.
All right. Well then, now it's time for Fox, the Mad Scientist Omega. Starhawks are bad, but objectives are good. Thus, people think Starhawks are good. Is this a hot take?
This one is so funny. I included it because we have our resident Starhawk player in the crowd. Well, not in the crowd, like you're here with me. I think Starhawks are bad without a gate, more so than they're bad without objectives. I think that makes sense. Yeah. I think Starhawks need a gate to do anything really well. Starhawks on their own are just too easy to kill. And I think only recently have we kind of seen a revival of the farming, the old fish farm objectives. And so this is yeah, I just, yeah, Starhawks are bad, I guess. End of statement.
It is funny. I would kind of call myself the Starhawk apologist, maybe is the way to phrase that. But you know, I think they're on to something to a certain degree. I think that Starhawks were in a really tough place in the meta because a lot of people talk about how slow they are and how and if you just run away from them, they'll you don't have to worry about them and things like that. And one of the things that I really thought about when I first put that fleet together is that what objectives can you use to force people to do the things that you want or be in certain places on the board that you want. And the first thing that comes to mind for a lot of people in that particular scenario is things like contested outpost and doomed station, where you're kind of you're telegraphing where you're going to be, but B, you're forcing them to come to you or you get points. And the problem there is exactly what I said, though, is about the telegraphing and the fact that you're basically saying, hey, I'm going to be here, come and kill me. And whereas with the farming objectives, with firelings and with the sensor nets, you get a lot more flexibility about what you can and can't do to farm those objectives and where you can be and how it forces the opponent to come across the board to you. And so that's what I think is. And then once they do get across that board, if they didn't get there till turn 3 or turn 4, it gets that much harder to kill a very tough Starhawk.
Truthy, you got any input on this one?
Starhawks are bad.
Okay.
Sorry. Good. Yeah, I think it is interesting to see the old fish farm kind of come back a little bit, and I think it's a little overhyped right now. It's not to say it's bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, it feels like a lot of folks playing around with this kind of archetype that weren't around when Fish Farm existed, that are kind of discovering like, oh yeah, that's a pretty potent mix. Yeah, so I think those objective stacks, especially the VCXs, are quite good, and you just got to learn to suck it up, take the red, and find a way to leverage it.
We'll see how that works out for you this weekend.
I mean, if it works out the way it usually does, usually it's pretty good. Who knows? We'll see. Things explode. That's all I really care about.
Things are definitely going to explode. All right, last one, and then we're gonna call it.
No, just about to say, put it away, gentlemen. Put it away. Save it for the weekend. Anyway, last one for Captain Tight Pants. Oh, wait. I messed that one up. Don't cut it, though. I want them to hear my pain. Last one for the 3-time world champion.
Stop that. Stop that. No, he hasn't even been to Worlds. Stop that.
You gotta stop that, man. Like I told you.
I will never stop. I am an agent of chaos. I will continue until the world burns. Generally, in imps, the commander limits the ships you take, while in rebels, the ships limit the commanders you want. If I have to reread that, my brain's gonna shut down. What do you got?
So I guess this one kind of, in my mind, revolves around the idea of Kraken, especially, and the fact that with Kraken and Triken to a degree as well, that you have to take certain ship types or the commander just doesn't work at all. So I guess I get what they're trying to say there. But I think that Imperials are far more flexible, and I think that for the most part, most ships will work with most of the commanders. There's obviously going to be exceptions. I mean, obviously Sloane wants to have some way to command her squads and wants to have be on something that is unlikely to die. But beyond that, I mean, like I feel like the imps are more flexible in those terms than the rebels are. The rebels, when you almost have to choose the commander that you're going to make before you start the fleet, and I don't feel like that's true for the Imperials. What do you think, Trudy?
I feel like imps are a little more cookie cutter in their builds. Like, I think you're right. I think you have a bit more flexibility on the commander that can sit in the seat. But at the same time, I feel like you see a lot of the same-ish fleets. Whereas Rebels, I think excepting the top 3 that we talked about in this last one, I think I see a lot more diversity in the Rebel ships that come. But you're right. I think Rebel commanders do very much dictate what kind of ships you're bringing.
No, I think it's the opposite. I don't think that's what the prompt is saying. Like if you even if you look at Hanover, you've got 3 fleets that are almost identical, and they have 2 different commanders, Dodonna and Riken. But you could easily slot Kraken in there. You could probably really easily slot Mothma in there. Leia could do some work. Like there's that. I think that's the point of the prompt is you can. If I told you had a fleet that was 3 CR90s, an MC30, and a GR75 with a few squads, like what commander are you flying? You would have no idea.
Akbar.
I would say straight up Riken or Kraken. I think a Leia list looks distinctly different from the rest of that. I actually John and I have created an abomination that he's sitting on until Worlds that he's been playing a little bit, and it's spoiler, it features a couple Nebulon Bs, and I think the Neb is actually a really good Leia ship because I think if you can get it intensify firepower, it can be really cheap and really hard to remove if you've got nothing but AST on it. Because Leia gives you that turn 1 super repair so that you just instantly bump 2 shields up, and then you just confire or nav as needed, and they leverage it really, really well.
Right, but what I'm saying is like I could give you a list of ships, and you could name like 3 or 4 commanders on the rebel side that would fit really, really well with all those ships. But you cannot do the same with Imperials. Like you can't. Like if I told you had a fleet that was an Onager and an ISD and a Gazanti, like what are the commanders that could be?
Mahdi, Ramodi, Gergerod, just
Piet.
3 right there. Piet. Yeah, Piet and a
Dang
pinch,
it, that's a
yes.
bad example. Wait.
I think
No more examples for you. No more examples.
yeah.
All
Well,
right.
I want to thank you, Trudy, for coming on with us again tonight. We appreciate it. It's always good to have you on the show. And
Always a blast to talk to you guys.
well, I'm sure we'll have you back again so that Juliet Whiskey can have his battle boo.
My battle boo.
I'll miss you, boo.
I'll miss you, boo boo. And I guess I will handle our usual wrap-up ceremonies. So, once again, thank you for listening to the Armada podcast. We appreciate you. Whoa. We're breaks. Hold on. Stop. Freeze. Wait. I almost forgot to do the one thing that you always got to do when you have a interviewee, guest. I know we asked this question last time, but it was a little while ago. Truthy, where can they find you at? Where, if they can find you, what can do they? You have any shout outs? Any kind of, hey, go buy my latest book, whatever you got.
I know. You guys know where to find us. BlissfullyIgnorantGaming.com. You can come jump onto our Discord.
All right, and that's blissfully ignorant, just like how I wake up every morning. All right, but anyways, thank you for coming out and listening to the Armada podcast. They added the something nice for the audience, but because I'm spiteful and evil, we're gonna skip it tonight. Thank you all, and you have a good night. Fly safe.
Thank you for listening to the Armada podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, keep up with the show on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Armada Podcast. Join us on Discord with the link in the show notes. Until next time.